to KTN Prime. Tonight, our big story, education matters front and center, is are we ready? Is the country ready to reopen on the 4th of January next year? Just 20 days, exactly 20 days away from that date. Remember, early in October, we heard grade 4, class 8, form 4 resume school, and the rest of the inland classes are set to commence then. And several issues we've highlighted for you already tonight on where the country stands in as far as preparedness is concerned. So we want to take that conversation forward. And I'm joined, as I mentioned before we went on break, but just in case you're joining us, Kahi Ndimuli is a chairperson of the Kenya Secondary Schools Heads Association and also a member of the COVID-19 Education Response Committee. So hoping to get some answers in as far as their talks, the meetings they've been having and preps, if at all, that have been put in place. Wilson Sosion is the Secretary General, Kenya National Union of Teachers, also a nominated member of parliament. Last but not least, Chief Administrative Secretary in the Ministry of Education, that's Zach Kinuthia. Gentlemen, thank you so much for making time for us this evening. Mr. Ndimuli, I'll begin with you. You sit in that committee formed to prepare for the situation we find ourselves in. Are we ready to reopen come 4th of January?
Thank you very much for the opportunity to share with you. Yes, I'm a member of the COVID-19 Response Education Committee. And from the committee's point of view, a lot of things were put in place on what everybody was supposed to do, from government, schools, and parents. And most of these things, I would say, they are yet to be done to the satisfaction of what the committee was looking forward to. So I would not say that we are 100% ready. And we will never attain that 100% readiness. But we are at some percentage based on the Ministry of Education guidelines that required schools to reopen.
Perhaps
our
more
biggest challenge,
specifics, sir. Perhaps more specifics, if you don't mind, regarding...
That's where I was heading to.
Yes.
Now, looking at the guidelines, our biggest challenge would be social distancing. Because as you are aware, by the time schools were closing, already most schools had recorded congested classrooms. Those with boarding facilities are the equally recorded congested boarding facilities. And therefore, that is where the biggest challenge that the schools are going to face. How do we reduce class sizes that were 60 before we closed to about 20 or 25 by the time they open and within this short time? So it is important for the nation to understand, and I think the Ministry of Education has come out very clearly on this before, that this is going to be a challenge. And therefore it is important for us to find out what other mitigation measures must be 100% put in place in order to fight this virus.
All right.
For example, are we going to ensure that we have enough hand-washing points in our schools for all our children and teachers to use, enough soap and enough sanitizers, and ensure that all the children have masks? If the Form 4 experience is anything to go by, then what we should be expecting is a challenge in children coming to school with masks, because we have seen that challenge with the current Form 4, and a challenge in the provision of the same masks, and then ensuring that they are worn properly.
All right, sir.
This is something that we to be looking forward to.
Allow me to interject in there and bring in CAS, Mr. Kinuthia. You've heard a not very confident feedback there from a member of the committee in as far as our preparedness. And that congestion issue is not one that has come with COVID, that now we need to consider how classrooms are reworked. It has been there for a long time. But also government has had 10 months to prepare. So how is it that we are looking or counting down the country is 20 days to go, but still uncertainty over whether this really is the way to go?
Thank you very much, Sophia, and very good evening to you and to Honorable Susion and my friend Kahi Idimuli, and all the people viewing from within and without Kenya. Let me say that as a government, we are ready to reopen. The confidence or lack thereof of my two colleagues in this interview should not count as the confidence level of the country or of the government of the Republic of Kenya. As a government, having been at the center and the only revolver around the reopening of schools, we are ready. I want to assure every person watching this interview this evening that we are ready to reopen schools. We have been preparing for the last 4 months to reopen school after we allowed our grade 4, class 8, and Form 4 to come back. And we brought them in advance so that they could guide us on the way forward. And now we know better how to go about it. Sophia, let me say this, that we said in our address the last time we appeared with Honorable Sosion and Honorable Kahi Idimuli, that the government is not going to use social distancing as a bottleneck. So that one is a very deep statement, because it is an admission that were we to apply social distancing as is expected of 25 children in every one class, 2/3 of our 16 million learners in Kenya will be locked out of school when we reopen fully. And therefore, the government is not keen on enforcing this social distancing. Let me say it that clearly so that people don't take it wrongly, that the government is going to ensure strict adherence to masking of our children within and out of classroom. And secondly, all the schools, and I say this with clarity, water and sanitation cannot be compromised, as has been seen. We have been going around and we have seen, I'll be going to Garissa before the end of the week to see that there are sanitation levels as are recommended by government.
I hear you, Bwana Sia, yes. Allow me to seek clarity, yes. Because on one hand, it sounds paradoxical to say you're not going to enforce social distancing. It is what the Ministry of Health has been preaching, and the entire world, in as far as health is concerned, and this pandemic, social distance. So yes, you have water and people can wash their hands, sanitation, but social distancing is the biggest aspect of containing COVID-19, and that is the one thing you're saying the government is not going to do. Then are we serious with this?
Let me tell you, I don't think social distancing is the greatest element in containing coronavirus. I'm not a medic and therefore not an expert in this area, but I want to say that masking children and sanitizing them and all the learners is at the center of ensuring that there is no transfer and transmission of virus, and there is no holding it in our arms and in our bodies. So, to enforce social distancing, we will lock out 2/3 of 16 million children who will be going to school from
Why didn't government build classrooms, sir?
That we are trying to ask ourselves as government.
Why not build classrooms and accommodate?
As you have said, it is good that that question is coming up at such a time, because since 1986, when session paper number 1 of 1986 was written, our greatest goal has been to expand learning space. Learning spaces is a gradual idea, and I tell you, as government, we have been able to achieve a lot, because having introduced CDF as a component for schools and security, we have added tremendous classrooms, laboratories, and ablution blocks to every schools in this country, and we are continuing to do it. Just to finish on that idea, I want to tell you that we are in the process of constructing classrooms, laboratories, ablution blocks in 30 mostly and majorly hit counties in this country, beginning this end of this month. We are going to put it. And this project is worth 6 billion and 800 million. And it is an ongoing project. So classrooms are being built. The president is also asking members of parliament, and this was done in his State of the Nation address, to put money where the emergency is. And what is the emergency today? The emergency is return to school. That means members of parliament are supposed to redirect their CDF money to classrooms, laboratories, ablution blocks, water, and masks.
All right,
It is not therefore absurd to see a member of parliament giving their mask to the children. We highly encourage that kind of refueling of their money.
Right. I want to bring in the Secretary General before we take a quick break. And your reactions to what you're hearing tonight, especially from government side, on really they're not standing or going to pursue that social distancing element. Talk to us about that. But more importantly, are teachers going to be going back to school? Remember, they were recalled some time back and asked to report to their stations. But will you be going back to work that 4th of January? Mr. Sosion.
Yes, thank you, and thank you for inviting us to this show and for opening up a more critical discussion in the remaining few days to reopening of schools. Number one, children must come back to school. That is agreed, because the socio-economic damages on learners and the suffering that they've gone through is very enormous, and we cannot postpone children coming back to school. And then number two, the big question whether teachers will be going back to school. I think it has reached a time that we appreciate that teachers are the key frontline soldiers at the school level. And of course, we have overemphasized the safety of learners and ignored the preparedness and the readiness for teachers. And I think that is the most critical area that we must discuss. What has happened to teachers for the last couple of weeks when schools reopen? We've had over 42 teachers dying, as at the data that we've received from the medical insurance provider for teachers. And this is not a small number. And therefore, that should compel us to reflect more deeply about the safety of teachers when we talk of getting so many learners and all the learners back to school. In fact, if we are not prepared, and I dare say, schools, I don't think, are prepared to comply with the minimum set standard of health regulations. If we don't do that, then we are creating a super spreading centers. Because as it is at the moment, we are returning with data each day with many Kenyans who are dying, and with the higher rate of infection, the positivity rate is very high, so that here practically, let us not generalize, we will be demanding for a proper status report of each and every school. And we've said this report must be from the public health, that really schools are certified safe and have complied with the minimum standards, and from the Ministry of Education, of course, so that we ensure that schools are safe, rather than generalizing and giving, and we talk. Of course, I sit in the COVID-19 committee, but I think this reopening of 4th January, it should contain more than we've seen in the past.
So are you
we
going
should
back?
See resources.
Will you be reporting? Will the teachers be reporting? You've had a row with the TSC, which you've highlighted in our story earlier. Will you be asking your members to stay away from duty?
I think that is an item subject to the processes that is underway. And when you talk about the matter between us and TSC, it is very serious. It is potential to cause a strike, very potential. When an employer decides to suspend a collective bargaining agreement, what is it trying to tell us? It is trying to provoke a strike. When an employer decides to discriminate against its own employees for reasons of being members of a union from promotions, then that is inviting a confrontation.
Right.
And when an employer decides to bust a union, and of course with the narrative dancing around that a strong union is bad for the country, I don't think those are matters that are very, very, very easy to accommodate at this time. That is a contentious issue, but that is a package that will deal with the employer separately. They're already local and international processes over this one, because this is a serious attack. You expect to reopen schools, and at the same time, you are hurting the very men and women who are expected to have the right motivation and, of course, the readiness to work extra to ensure that schools resume. So it's not an easy thing, and we cannot promise everyone. This is another package. Doctors and nurses and medics are on strike, and they're demanding for simple things: personal protective equipment, and of course, certain allowances to be meted. But here, there's an employer that is suspending a duly certified, signed CBA that's deposited in court against a union and against its own members. This is a very serious matter that, of course, it's enough to invite an instant strike. But at the moment, it is within the docket of, it's under the hands of the Minister for Labour, and there is already international attention and international pressure on this matter. So if it is not sorted out, we can't promise Kenyans that will be there. We cannot guarantee. So
that is a potential strike. Teachers are not sure whether they will be reporting to duty. That is pending. Those conversations ongoing with the Employer Teacher Service Commission. The government says when it comes to social distancing, that's not even a place they are going into in as far as putting measures to ensure the same and enforce it in schools. So we'll be staying with our guest, and this conversation will continue a little bit later right here on KTN Prime. Remember to keep your thoughts coming. Do you think Kenya is ready, even off of what you've just heard from the guests so far this evening? Do you think the country is ready to resume in-class learning starting 4th of January next year? You can tweet me at Sophia Wanuna. We're taking a break. When we come back, the business news.